You know what makes Minot magic to me?
Good friends.
Great people.
It's our downtown.
You can't beat it.
Welcome.
Rediscover.
Rediscover the magic in Minot.
2020 has been a year. So I tell you what, let's focus on something positive. How about a Citizen of the Year? This year for the State of the City, we are going to be looking for one individual who has done magic things in Minot. There's a catch though. I want you to submit the application, or rather the provenance that explains why that this individual deserves the Citizen of the Year award for the city of Minot. So I want you to grab a phone or anything else that you can record on and make your submission. Even if you don't know how to run a camera phone or recording device, we can certainly help you out right here in the Minot Public Library with some great people that can even teach you a new skill. But you know what? We're going to make this even a little better. The winner of the Citizen of the Year is going to have a $1,000 donation made in their name to their favorite charity right here in Minot. That is all compliments of First International Bank and Trust here of Minot, and even for doing such a great job of making that submission, the person that is submitting the video is going to be given $100 in chamber bucks, courtesy of North Dakota Farmers Union Insurance. So, how do you get those submissions? Well, we'll show you how.
What makes Minot magic for me is the way our community comes together. There is no other community that is able to come back from a setback like Minot.
Here we go. We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, December 21st. It is 5:30 in the afternoon. I would ask that everyone go ahead and silence their electronic devices or put them on vibrate so we can keep distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Evans. Here. Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we jump into our COVID update, I do want to take just a moment, one for just a short piece of information and a thank you. Today it looks like Congress has passed a year-end funding bill. Inside of that funding bill is authorization for the Minot Flood Protection Project, allowing for federal funding to come for the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Project for Phase 4. That is fantastic news. I want to say a big thank you to Senator Hoeven and the rest of our congressional delegation that has assisted with that process, and as well as staff is providing information to all of those folks to help get that pushed through. and as well as some other work from Senator Hoeven specifically and his staff, as it appears that there has been a one-year extension on the National Disaster Resiliency Program for that deadline. So great news. A big thank you again to Senator Hoeven, his staff, and everyone else who put a lot of effort and work into getting all of those aspects taken care of. It certainly will have a big impact not only to Minot, but the entire region in regards to flood control and to the NDR. With that, if we do have more that we need to discuss on that, we can do towards the end of our council meeting here. Let's move to number 3, which is our COVID update, and I'm not quite sure if Ms. Clute is on the line yet. I will just pause for a moment if First District Health Unit Director Lisa Clute is on. I do realize it has been a little bit busy with some of the different aspects of the vaccination taking place, so if she's not on at this moment, we'll certainly pick that up at a point if she is able to call in later in the meeting. With that, we will just pause on that and come back if we need to. Number 4 is consent items, and we have a number of different consent items, 4.1 through 4.17. I've been asked to pull 4.17 for individual consideration. Are there any other individual items within consent that need to be pulled? Otherwise, they will be passed with staff recommendations. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on all of the remaining items.
Motion to approve the remaining items from Alderman Olson.
Second.
Second from Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 4.17 is the Water Model Task Order Engineering Services. Each year, we contract with Houston to provide model data such as hydrant flow data, flow information modeling, and info and incorporation of the changes made to water infrastructure. This contract is also used when we have low flow or water quality issues we are confronted with. It is cheaper to contract this modeling service than it is to hire individual personnel, train them, and then buy the software to complete the work. We have 2 recommendations tonight from item 4.17, and that is to approve the contract in the amount of $30,000 with Houston Engineering for the yearly water model update and flow analysis assistance of the Minot water system, the typo there, and 2, authorize the mayor to sign the contract. Is there a motion?
I move.
Motion to approve from Alderman Patagula.
Second.
Is there a second? Second from Alderwoman Evans. Alderman Patagula, you had asked that this be pulled.
Yes, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to raise some concerns regarding water quality issues. I was contacted, and I think several of us might have been contacted, by a citizen who reported some very unfortunate issues with water quality that they reported they had spent a lot of money trying to fix. And it sounds like the city staff had been very helpful, and the water people had gone out of their way to try to flush mains and stuff like that. But there was a real problem with the quality of the water, particularly in terms of residue. And I don't know how many other people there are like that, how many other neighborhoods there are where people are long suffering. Occasionally we find out from someone that they've had water issues for a long time. And as part of this study, I guess I'd like to get a sense from the engineers at the end of it, where we are aware of issues like this and what our plans are to fix them. The particular area I'm talking about is by the new, hopefully a new fire station on 25th Street Northwest between 2nd and 4th Avenues. And again, anecdotally, I've heard of other areas. And again, I think the water department has done a very good job trying to make ends meet. It sounds like from what we've been told that it's going to take a couple of years before we can reconstruct water mains in that area. And all of us know that, we've neglected this. This has been deferred maintenance for years, if not generations. And that's nothing peculiar to Minot. Other cities are in worse shape. But I think it's important that we have a sense of where there are problem areas and have some idea as to how long it'll take to fix them. And that may lead to some changes in our budgeting process later on. I feel very sad when people again, are long suffering and don't complain, and when they do raise issues, that they're dealt with very nicely by staff. But I think there are systematic issues out here that I think we need to be more aware of. So I just wanted to make that point and ask for that kind of information.
Public Works Director Dan Jonason.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padragula, we have a lot of that information already because our water department has areas of town that they regularly flush. We're aware of these areas, but as new ones pop up, all our staff go out there and take care of it right away, do the flushing. It's in areas where we have the old cast iron pipe. And hopefully later on this winter, we will be bringing you a plan to tackle replacing some of that cast iron pipe. It's old 6-inch cast iron pipe that is probably only has a 2 or 3 inch diameter left in it from all of the buildup in it. Like I said, it's an ongoing situation. We've had it for years. That's what they used back in the early years, all the way up until the 70s when PVC pipe came. And like I said, we certainly plan to address it, but just so you know, we have, I think, about 326 miles of pipeline, and of that, over 86 miles of it is cast iron pipe in the city of Minot. So it's going to take some years to get it replaced.
Right, and I appreciate that information. I look forward to getting the report from you and from the engineers. And I don't mean this in any way as a criticism of city staff. I think they've done a very good job on this particular location too. But it's a systemic problem, and that's not a staff problem. That's a political leadership problem, and that's why I bring it up. It's something for us to do and figure out, how we allocate overall resources. I think you've done a good job with what you have, but we may want to look at putting more of a priority on that, or some of us may not. But anyway, thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Further discussion? Any further discussion? Last call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Padragula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yep. Motion is approved. We'll pause here for a moment, and I do realize this is out of order. We do have Lisa Clute on the line now for revisiting our COVID update number 3 here. Good evening, Ms. Clute. Appreciate you joining us, and if you would, go ahead with, I think, the latest information, as our numbers today were quite a bit lower, understandably. Mondays typically are. But if you would take us through the numbers and also some of the early stages of the vaccination program.
I will do that. I am receiving a lot of feedback. It's hard to communicate. Let me try the headphones again.
All right, Ms. Clute, can you hear me now, as they say?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. Still a lot of feedback.
About the only thing I could probably give you some advice on the tech side is turn your computer down and let it run through your headphones only.
Are looking substantially better. They are actually very exciting. All this feedback. Okay. So with your active cases for 10,000 residents.
Say, Lisa, I'm going to pause you here. Can you just hold the microphone from your headset up? We could hear you clearly that way, but we can't hear you otherwise that well. Perfect, thank you.
Puts us in the orange category. So we are out of red in that category. That's exciting. Your tests that we are doing, the demands for tests have gone down somewhat, but we are still making tests available. There are still tests going in. There are some Binex tests being conducted by the school system by Minot Public, or they were last week. Now they're off, obviously. And so that is something that they are doing with guard assistance. And Dr. Volmer, I know, has been very excited about how that's going. The test positivity rate on the 14-day rolling average is now at 7.7%, which takes us into the moderate risk. So that is a substantial improvement from where we were. So first of all, I just have to say kudos and thank you for everybody that has worked so hard in driving these numbers down, and that is just so exciting to see. And we just are so appreciative of everybody in the community that has followed mitigation recommendations, and it's going well. So hospital and funeral home capacity, we continue to monitor that. We were monitoring it on a daily basis. We've moved it to 3 times a week now, and that is going much. They have capacity, I'll say that. The hospital is still relatively tight, but everybody has capacity at this point. So that too is an improvement of where we were sitting at a while ago. So again, everything is moving in the right direction. We want to reiterate the importance of continuing these mitigation recommendations, because obviously we've seen it happen. I mean, they can spike and hurry too. So long-term care facilities, the cases within Ward County have gone down substantially also. So we have not a lot of residents. I can't give you the information exactly, but I want to say it's like in that 5 Ward County. That's my best estimate. And also we still have some staff in the long-term care facilities, but not nearly the numbers that we had earlier. The data has been a challenge, and it's typically the mayor and Dave Lakefield are receiving information from us regarding daily counts and all of that. When the state tried to include the Binex testing into the data sheets, it overwhelmed the system. Consequently, they have been trying to fix it since that occurred. So for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, we are struggling getting county data. We can get our statewide data, and we can get basic county data, but not the detail that we have received in the past. They are continuing to work on it and keep promising that it will be fixed soon. So obviously I'm not a tech person, or I wouldn't have feedback, so I can't tell you much more about why all of that is going on, but it's on the state end, and they are working on fixing that. So the big news for now, obviously, is the vaccine. That, as in everything with COVID, changes by the hour, by the day. It is a constant struggle to keep up with it. So this is what I can tell you as of today. Right now, the Pfizer vaccine has been in. I'm sure you all saw that Trinity began administering some of the Pfizer vaccine to their employees. We also, this weekend, and after a lengthy discussion on Saturday and Sunday, the Moderna vaccine was approved and emergency use authorization provided. So consequently, that is what is coming in to First District, and we will be utilizing those doses to do the emergency responders and all of that 1A population where there are gaps. When I say the 1A population, I mean the priority 1A that's been identified by the state of North Dakota. So originally we were told that we would be receiving Moderna vaccine every week once it was approved. That has changed now, and we are getting our initial 210 doses, and then everything next week and the following week will go into long-term care. So we will not be receiving vaccine for emergency responders during that week of January or December 30th and January 4th. Not sure if I'm getting the right date. Okay, the week of December 28th and the week of January 4th, yes. So our next shipment after this original 210 will come January 11th. At that point, we expect that we will get into the city of Minot fire and law enforcement population. So again, Trinity is taking care of the community ambulance. We're taking care of rural ambulances. And so the 210 doses that we have allocated right now, and I talked to the fire chief last week about this. What we have allocated, the first 30 doses go to my vaccinators. So they will be the ones out vaccinating all of these people. Then the next doses will go out to those rural EMS ambulance providers. They are a higher risk. They are traveling further, have less ability to protect themselves just because of travel times and so forth. And also the city has more sophisticated PPE like fire chief talked about too. So we will be focusing our efforts on that in the rural areas, and then the city of Minot will go next. So probably that week of January 11th. Now, stay tuned because every day changes. The one thing that I will say though is on the Moderna vaccine, that has been identified for 18 and older. There have been 5 or 6 cases now of anaphylactic reaction to that vaccine. So consequently, we will likely not use the Moderna for that population, just to err on the side of caution. That is up to the provider, and we have not met with Dr. Wigway yet on that. That just came out this weekend. but my bet would be we would err on the side of caution and not utilize that vaccine for people that have had a history of severe allergic reactions. The other news I can tell you is that with the next priority, which move into 1B and 1C, what happened is federally they have made their recommendations, and right now they're saying priority 1B would be 75 and older and all essential workers. When you talk about essential workers, that can mean teachers, grocery stores, any of those. And then their other recommendation is 1C would be 65 and older. The ACIP recommendations is what that is. The state has an ethics committee that is reviewing their recommendations, and they may or may not follow those recommendations. They haven't always followed those recommendations. The process for that is the ethics committee at the state was meeting this afternoon. Once that meeting has occurred, those recommendations go to the governor, and then decisions are made at the statewide level. So we have not received recommendations yet from the state in regards to 1B and 1C. Obviously we're not there yet, but people are asking about it, and I'm just being very transparent. That's where it's at right now. People are all asking, when will we get the vaccine? When will we have availability to it? And we just can't answer that yet. But I would anticipate that by next week, we will know the state's recommendations for priority groups B and C. But obviously, the most important issue to you right now is, when are your emergency responders going to be vaccinated? And my best guess on that right now would be the week of January 11th. So with that, I guess I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lute. Appreciate the update. Any questions on any of the material or otherwise for COVID-19? Thank you, Lisa. We will continue to look for information in the coming weeks. As you mentioned, things continue to evolve by the hour and by the day. Appreciate, again, taking the time to share that information. Back to the regular schedule agenda. Action items is number 5. 5.1 is 2018 abatement request by the, I apologize if I mispronounce it, the Huddy Group LP for 92 vacant lot parcels in Prairie Wind, 4th and 5th edition. The Huddy Group LP is requesting a reduction in the 2018 true and full valuations for 92 vacant lot parcels in the Prairie Wind 4th and 5th. The city assessor recommendation is denial of all 2018 abatement requests. Prior to a motion, I would look to our city assessor for a bit of information, and then we can proceed from there.
Good evening, Mayor Sibin and council members. My name is Ryan Komrowski. I'm the city assessor for the city of Minot. Our first item here is the 2018 abatement request, as mentioned by Huddy Group, for the 92 vacant lots. Just quick background here: property owners have the right to appeal through the form of an abatement according to North Dakota Century Code. This abatement goes back to the tax year 2018. The applications for abatement and refund of property taxes were not filed in accordance with North Dakota Century Code. Therefore, denial is the only applicable decision that the council has for the 2018 abatements. Attached within your packet here is both the Century Code, which highlights that upon application filed in the office of the county auditor on or before November 1st of the year following which the taxes become delinquent. Therefore, the applications for abatement were not filed with the county auditor until November 20th, 2020. Therefore, there is no action other than denial for the 2018 abatements. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. Any questions prior to a motion? If not, what is the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion for action item 5.1 to deny the 2018 abatement requests.
Second.
Motion by Alderwoman Evans for denial, second by Alderman Janser. Any follow-up questions for our city assessor before we move on while he's at the podium? Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. Stay close if we have any follow-ups. If you want to come forward, please just state your name and who you represent, your city of residency as well, please.
My name is Ben Hootie. I'm chairman and president of Hootie Group LP. I'm disappointed in just witnessing what happened in the last couple of minutes. And the reason I am is because we have been addressing our tax issue on the piece of ground referred to as Prairie Wind since 2016. But most recently, I was in Minot. By the way, I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. We just flew in this afternoon. Most recently, in August, I attended in Minot. I met with city officials. Dave was one of them, as was Damon. I have never met Ryan, and we were trying to work towards a solution or an amicable agreement to our taxes. Here's why. We purchased the property known as Prairie Wind in the year 2011. Our first taxation that we received, real estate taxes that we received, equated to $252 an acre. There's 95 acres out there. It's agricultural land. It's always been. Nothing has ever changed. It still is today. Over the course of the last 8 years, that rate went up to $2,835 an acre, which is over 1,000% increase in 8 years' time. Since 2012, including 2020, will have been billed and paid $1.7 million in taxes and special assessments on 95 acres of ground that is agricultural ground that today grows alfalfa that we have leased out to a local producer for $45 an acre. I draw your attention to that because of the fact that now let's go back to August of 2020. I met with Dave, I met with Damon, I met with Marissa, and the plan was in place to address this situation because it's out of control, completely out of control. Damon committed to come up with some numbers that they thought they could work within their department and to share those with us. In the absence of that, we could apply for abatement. He provided us with the forms. I went back to Scottsdale, got Rick working on the forms, just in case we required them. We waited until October 28th, fully conscious of the fact that you needed to have the applications by November 1st. We were aware of that. Not having any correspondence from the city assessor's department prior to October 28th, I instructed Rick to courier our abatement applications to the city of Minot. He put it in a FedEx package. They guaranteed delivery October the 30th. We have all of that with us, which has been provided to you as well. I understand you have a package there from us. Apparently, because of the snowstorm, they couldn't deliver it on October 30th. It was delivered the next available day, which was a Monday, November 2nd. So November 1st was a Sunday, which nobody would have been available to accept delivery anyways. In light of the fact that we had as many people involved in this process, knowing full well that we were going to make application for abatement had we not received an offer or a number that we thought was reasonable in terms of the taxes, which, by the way, we don't receive any correspondence from Ryan until November the 12th. Interestingly enough, it was dated October the 28th. Wasn't received. As soon as we received it on November the 12th, I called him. He resent it to me. But the first we received was November the 12th. So we couldn't respond to any offer from the city's assessor department anyways. Hence the reason why the instructions were given to courier the abatement applications. So I would ask you to reconsider setting aside 2018. It was always our intentions. In fact, the applications, when they arrived at the city, they turned around and sent them back to us in Scottsdale.
Both 2018 and 2019.
So we have some issue. And in light of the fact that we're talking about $1.7 million in taxes and special assessments on this property, in the last 8 years, denying us the opportunity to address at least the last 2 years of it, I think would be a miscarriage. I request you at least allow us to address both 2018 and 2019 taxes, which you received our abatement forms on November 2nd through FedEx, which was a day after, happened to be a Sunday, November 1st.
All of which delayed by weather systems, which forced them not to be able to deliver on Friday the 30th by noon, which was the scheduled delivery.
Sir, I don't have your name.
Rick McCann.
Rick McCann. People at home can't hear you. That's why I'm referencing you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Huddy prior to, we will look to Mr. Komorowski for a little bit of follow-up on the information that you had stated as far as the timeframes. Alderwoman Evans.
You have, I'm looking at the stamp from the Ward County Auditor saying receipt was on 11/20. Do you have evidence that it was 11/1?
So yes, we have a signed receipt notice from the city assessor's office on November 2nd that included both the 2018 and 2019 applications.
Maybe Ryan can explain why the Ward County Auditor didn't stamp it then till 11/20 when he comes back up.
Alderman Pittner, we'll get to that in just a minute. Alderman Pittner.
Why did you wait until the last possible day to send it? Was there a reason?
Well, yeah. The reason why is when I met on August 12th with Dave Lakefield, I was directed to the City Assessor's Department. Actually, I met with Marissa first and then went over to the City Assessor's Department. And my meeting with Damon went what I thought was well. He wanted to drive out to the property just to confirm that there was no streets, no light posts, water lines or sewer lines, which there isn't. There's none of that exist. And then wanted to deal with it internally to get back to us with a number. We never received that number until November 12th. So it wasn't so much us waiting until the last date. We were waiting on receiving something from the assessor's department that we could even consider.
Other questions for Mr. Huddy at this time? Alderman Pittner.
What are the special improvements on the property for? And what improvements have you made to the property, if any? Is it literally just a field?
Correct. It's agricultural land planted to alfalfa and some Timothy grass. And if you're talking about the special assessments, well, the special assessments, as I understand it, was for the street that went in front of the Ramstead School. They assessed our property over $1 million for that street. And our tenant never uses that street. So it was of little purpose to us.
Okay.
Mr. Huddy, what is the current zoning on that property? Is it zoned agriculture?
There's a number of different zoning for different parts of the properties, but that was done by a previous interested party, and the property is still currently being used as either vacant land or just recently as agricultural land.
Is it zoned AG or is it zoned R1?
Again, there's different zoning in
I'll
place, but
follow up with the city
but I don't
assessor.
know if the zoning case is still in effect or if that is expired. I think at this time it would have to come back up in front of the council irregardless. It's been at least 8 years, 7 years since the zoning was approved.
Zoning typically doesn't expire. It would have to be changed back through a zoning change. Further questions, further comments, we'll look for a little bit of more information from our city assessor, and then if you have any follow-up, we can continue from there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Komorowski.
I'll just touch base on the zoning since that was the most recent one. The property is zoned M1 light industrial and then R4 planned residential. As for the communications, yes, I was out of the office. I was on active duty military orders during the time frame when this whole process started. Upon my return to the office, there was an email, which is a copy of it's provided in your package, sent on October 26th to Ben Hoody's email with our recommendations for 2018, 2019, 2020 to recommend evaluations to defer the abatement process on that. Our office did receive the applications on November 2nd, but that is our office, the city assessors, not the county auditor. And therefore, I'd be happy to go through the 2018 abatements with the property owner, but we as a city and as a county have no legal standing to hear the 2018 abatements. And that's set forth as provided here in the Supreme Court case of Trollwood Village Partnerships versus Cass County, which highlights that the North Dakota Supreme Court has construed the language to indicate that in order to have property taxes abatement or refunded, property owner must have filed the application on or before November 1st.
Further follow-up questions for our city assessor? Alderman Pittner.
Ryan, how do we tax properties? Do we tax them as they're used, or do we tax them how they're zoned?
So as assessors and appraisers, we look at the highest and best use of the property. We take zoning, use, overall market, basically comparable sales. Those go into our overall analysis of the valuation itself.
Okay, and if I may
continue.
Therefore, since it is an M1 zoning and not limited by an ag zoning, it would be held to that standard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions for our city assessor? Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. I'll look for Mr. Huddy if you have a final follow-up.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that I received no correspondence via email dated October 26th. And I find that interesting, actually, because I've never had an issue like this. And the first time we received any correspondence was by actual mail, which was on November the 12th. So there was no email. Now, I'm not here to question anybody's integrity. That's not our purpose. But it's interesting that October 26th would provide us how many days, even if that happened, how many days would it provide us to even consider what the city's assessors department came up with? But it was never received by us. And that's the truth.
Alderwoman Evans.
But here's the thing. So the century code is a century code. November 1st to the Ward County auditor, right? You guys sent it to the city assessor. That's the wrong entity. So I guess you have to understand our position that we are bound by state law, and as you are, to send, your request for abatement to the correct entity by the correct date. Neither of which happened.
So at the point in time where the county auditor receives a copy of the applications, does the city assessor get a copy of those applications?
I don't know what the process is, and that's not really my concern, because it's your responsibility to send the abatement request to the correct entity by the correct date. That's what we're here to determine. And if those things aren't met, then we have to deny the abatement request.
So if the intent from August of 2020 was to try to coordinate in person and then via regular mail, we're talking literally about an incorrect address and ultimately about a snowstorm that delayed delivery based on the time frame that we didn't receive information from the assessor to try to continue our conversations to come to an amicable valuation.
And I empathize with that, but we have the century code, right? That's what guides us as a governing body, as property owners, as taxpayers. They didn't write in a discretionary, thing, but if there's a snowstorm and the property owner has sent it to the wrong address, you can grant an exception.
So let me offer this. In light of the fact of the size of this issue, the dollar value of this issue, everybody that was aware that we were on it and trying to deal with it in the most efficient manner that we could, and cooperative manner as well. That's why we waited to hear from the, or thinking we were going to hear from the city's assessor department, which we didn't. And we waited until the last day before we could send the courier package out. That was our courtesy. Because we could have said in September, we don't trust these people. And we could have sent it in then and had plenty of time to have corrected a mistake. We appeal to some consideration here in light of all of what's happened. I don't think it can simply be said, you didn't get it to us by November 1st.
Do you all have in your information packet an email shared that I sent to Marissa Haman with the Ward County Auditor's Office?
If we were to take a look at the PDF that was attached, there are, if I recall, over
207.
207 pages within that attachment.
These are two separate documents that I was
that were handed
requested,
out prior?
but I was requested to send any additional information directly to Mr. Kamrowski that would then be included in each of your city council packets. 2 separate FedEx packages, one delivered or one sent by me on December 8th, received December 9th, and one sent by me on December 9th, received December 10th in the Minot County Assessor's Office. Are those actually in your packets?
I am seeing a couple of different FedEx receipts here.
We're talking about an email
Okay,
that
let me go
was
back to the
attached
emails.
to the letter addressed to the assessor that he requested additional information be sent directly to him so that he could include it in your city council packets.
Showing an email to Marissa Hammond
Yes.
from November 27th.
Oh, they're in this.
Okay,
What was left on our desks,
yes.
not in the PDF.
So this is part of your review of our information as it relates to consideration we're asking you for. It details the events leading up to the date where we were left with no other option than to send it via FedEx overnight on October 28th. So I incorrectly put the address of the person we had been communicating with, the most recent, Marissa Haman. That communication is for the next meeting, January 5th. So I incorrectly put the address of Mr. Kamrowski, thinking that that was the person to send the information to. That's who we'd been communicating with.
Any further questions at this time?
I realize it's a long-winded email, but it's for you guys to see the steps that we had taken from August all the way up through and including October 28th.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Pittner?
Question for Kamrowski.
Okay, one follow-up question, and then we'll continue with discussion.
Ryan, if I were to want to abate my taxes from 2018 and I filed an abatement, can I withdraw that abatement? Can our conversation still take place to find a compromise? I feel like that's been done in the past on maybe some local discourse.
Mayor Sima, Alderman Pittner, as long as that conversation and those abatements have to be filed prior to November 1st of this year on that aspect. And to touch base on the emails in the documentation that was provided by the applicant, that is included in the 207-page memorandum here, pages 87 through 203. Do highlight those emails that were submitted by the applicant on that standpoint. But yes, you can definitely have a conversation up to that point, but ultimately the applicants had 2 years to file an abatement on the property, and to wait to the very last moment and then miss the deadline. As I stated, we have, as a city, as a county, have no legal ramification to hear this abatement.
Perfect, thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Just as a point of clarification as well, if regardless of approve or disapprove, there is the option, or I should say if the measure is voted to not allow the abatement, there is still the opportunity to go before the Ward County Assessor to abate this issue. So it is not the final step. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is to follow the recommendations of the City Assessor, denial of the 2018 abatement. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Dancer?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yep.
Quadrigula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes. Motion is approved. That takes us to the next item, 5.2. This is the 2019 abatement hearing. The Huddy Group LP for 92 vacant lot parcel in Prairie Wind 4th and 5th edition. The Huddy Group LP is requesting a reduction in the 2019 true and full valuations for 92 vacant lot parcels. The Prairie Wind 4th and 5th editions. 2 recommendations before us. City Assessor recommends partial approval of the abatement request for the residential light industrial zoned lots. My printer didn't print out the second recommendation here, so
There's only one for this.
there is only one. Okay. The GIS printed out. So that is the recommendation from the City Assessor. Mr. City Assessor Komorowski.
Again, so we touched base, it's the same 92 lots that the applicants applied for in the 2018 abatements. Our 2019s, we do recommend a reduction in the 2019 true and full value. Our reductions are provided in the packet as well, but I'll just touch base on it here. This abatement application goes back to 2019. Several attachments to this memo regards to the parcels, the abatement request, and the recommendations from this office. We do recommend, as I stated, a partial reduction to the residential and light industrial zone parcels. As we went through, I'll touch base a little bit more over on how we came up with our recommendations, but ultimately I'll let the applicant make their appeal to the board and then touch base on how we came up with our recommended valuation adjustments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. Would ask the applicant to come forward and give us a little bit more on the 2019 abatement, and then we will follow that with a motion and further questioning.
Okay to take off my mask or leave it on?
You can take it off if you wish.
So as I was preparing my dialogue for tonight, I included 2018 with 2019. I apologize if I include it inaccurately, but I think it needs to be heard. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Minot City Council, City Manager, Mayor of Minot, and representatives of the Minot City Assessor, and all of the guests. My name is Rick McCann of the Hootie Group. Prairie Wind property is comprised of approximately 85 acres. It is located on 36th Avenue North, east of Highway 83 bypass, northwest of Minot Airport. I'll pause for just a second and ask if you have part of the packet, maybe not 207 pages, but the information that I sent on the 9th, on the 8th, that includes our land comparable summary, an aerial map, and the list of the 92 parcels. I'll be referring to that throughout my dialogue. I'll try to talk slowly and wait for acknowledgement. Hootie Group had been working with the Minot City Assessor since August 2020 on the review of the land valuation of the Prairie Wind property for tax years 2018, 2019, and 2020. The current and historical land use of Prairie Wind has been vacant and/or agricultural cropland since the February 2011 acquisition. This land use does not warrant the current assessor valuation for 2018, 2019, and 2020. In October 2020, Hootie Group submitted the application for abatement or refund of taxes for 2018 and 2019. Our application for each of our 92 parcels for both 18 and 19 included the application information page, summary of land valuation comparables, and an aerial map reflecting the Prairie Wind property. Each of the 7 land valuation comparables, as well as some other Hootie Group labeled HGLP properties on the land summary and on the aerial. The land valuation summary page for 2018 and 2019, I believe you may now have in front of you, show our other Hootie Group properties at the top of the page, our Prairie Wind property in the middle of the page, and the land valuation comparables on the bottom third of the page. As you can see, the 7 land comparable properties, 2018 and 2019 valuation per acre, are both far below our Prairie Wind's valuation per acre. Specifically, comparable number 2, if you look on your aerial map, is located directly across the street from Prairie Wind and is zoned R4 like a group of Prairie Wind parcels, the 5th edition blocks 1 through 4, and was assessed at $21,829 per acre for both 2018 and 2019. I apologize, the print is small on my valuation summary. Comparable number 3 on the aerial map shows the same property line along 8th Avenue Northwest. I believe this is the east-west, actually the north-south line. and is the closest in size at 51.5 acres versus our 85 acres for Prairie Wind. Comparable number 3 was assessed for $14,951 per acre for both 2018 and 2019. I believe that is reflected as industrial zoned on my land valuation summary. Comparable number 4 has a similar size to a portion of Prairie Wind 5th Edition, blocks 1 through 4. And that property has been assessed at $9,216 per acre for both 2018 and 2019. Comparable 4 shows an agricultural zoning. Comparable number 5 has frontage on Highway Bypass 83 and has had a valuation below $1,000 per acre for both 2018 and 2019. Comparable 5 is just to the northwest of our Prairie Wind property. Comparable 6 and 7 are similar as to land use, agricultural or cropland, and slightly larger than our Prairie Wind proper, the 85 total acres. Both are in the same alignment with the airport takeoff and landing flight path, and both also have frontage on Highway 83 bypass, like Prairie Wind. Comp 6 and 7 were assessed for between $791 and $815 per acre for 2018 and 2019, versus our total Prairie Wind 85 acres at $124,849 for both 2018 and 2019. The Prairie Wind property acreage ranges from 1.97 to 30.259 acre portions. As you can see on the land valuation summary, some of them have different zonings, so they're broken out with different parcel sizes. The land valuation comparables, numbers 1 through 7, acre ranges from 3.67 to 146.9 acres. The grand total of our land valuation comparables equals 334 acres. The Prairie Wind property valuation ranges from $87,941 to $372,160 per acre. You can see that on the per acre column, the valuation slash capital A, capital C. It's the third row over in the middle section of the page where it references $124,849. The total Prairie Wind, the land valuation comparables, number 1 through 7 on the bottom third. Valuation ranges from $791 to $27,451 per acre. The $27,451 per acre property is also a Hootie Group LP-owned property. If you look at your aerial map, you may barely see it. It's up in the top right corner. Next to number 6. The total Prairie Wind property valuation for 2018 and 2019 equals $124,849 per acre. The land valuation comparables valuation for 2018 is $4,170 per acre. The next page will show you the 2019 at $4,175 per acre. So not much change from year over year for our land comparables. No change for our Prairie Wind property. Based on the equitable approach to valuation for similar land use and zoned properties, and with no material change in land use for our Prairie Wind property since the 2011 acquisition, we have asked for $4,171 per acre for both 2018 and 2019 across our Prairie Wind property of approximately 85 acres. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Was it Mr. McCann?
Yes.
On your comparables on both the HGLPs 76 and 52, number 6 and 7, did you use comparables that were outside of city limits within the county that were zoned agricultural? Did you break out those differences on there?
No, I literally took properties that were in close proximity to the subject property. If they were, my purpose was to show properties that were either contiguous, meaning they shared the same street, or they were within one street side of Highway Bypass 83, or were, in the case of number 1, a property with similar zoning. Each of the other 2 properties, number 2 and number 4, were residentially zoned. So I went for zoning and contiguous and as close as possible to overall acreage size and/or use.
Okay. Questions at this time for Mr. McCann? Thank you, sir. If we do have any more questions, we'll certainly bring you back up. Mr. Komrosky, we'll go ahead and continue on with the conversation before we take a motion.
I'm not going to go through the first 300-some pages with the council here. I'll get to the grits of it here. City of Minot Assessor Office recommends denial of the initial abatement request made by Huda Group. The applicant is asking that the property be valued less than market value for agricultural land, which the property is not. The assessor's opinion of highest and best use of the property is residential or commercial as applicable. It is our recommendation that we reduce the 2019 valuations for Prairie Wind 4th edition down to $1.50 a square foot, and then the Prairie Wind 5th edition down to $1 a square foot. In our analysis of the 2019 valuations, we reviewed both comparable sales, which we're required to as appraisers, and then also comparable assessments, make sure we're equalized across the board in our assessments. When reviewing the initial 2019 valuations, it was determined that we were not equalized across the board with our assessments. And so we looked at where our current assessments were of similar comparable properties and how we derived those assessments as well. So I'll first touch base on the comparable sales that we used for the vacant land. When we're looking at our 2019 assessments, our assessment data is as of February 1, 2019. Therefore, we're looking at any 2018 sales that happened prior to that point in time. We did come up with three sales for our M1 light industrial with a median valuation of $1.67 a square foot. And then also for our residential R1 through R3, we had a median valuation of $1.99 a square foot. When we go through then to our 2019 comparable assessments, I'll touch base back with our GIS map here shortly. We look at our median assessments for comparable properties as well. For our M1 light industrial and commercial zone properties, we had a median assessment of $2.01. Our multi-density, multi-residential R3 zone properties, we had a median assessment of $2.50. And as we go through our couple hundred residential lots, comparable lots, we had a median assessment of 98 cents. Therefore, when we analyze this, our comparable sales data and our comparable assessment data, that's how we derived out our recommended valuations of $1.50 a square foot and $1 a square foot for the residential. Touching back on the comparables that the applicant touched based on, I'll just go through them real quick here. They're comparable number 1, that's county assessed parcel. We don't do our evaluations with the county's parcels on that basis. Number 2 and number 3 were in the city limits. As you can see, number 2 is part of the airport glide zone, so there is a no build easement listed on that parcel as well. Number 3, we do have an assessed price per square foot of 34 cents. And then numbers 4 through 7 are all county assessed agricultural zone parcels. It's as explained by the applicant there, these are broad acre descriptions, anywhere from 80 to 160 acre parcels. When we touch base then on, I'm gonna go put a little technology into play here. In front of your screen here, we have the applicant's parcels. Right down here along 36th Avenue Circle, we have the residential zone parcels, and then to the north and to the east are the commercial, and then the R4 zoned as well. When we start looking at comparable sales, we look in the vicinity. We have a 2018 sale just northeast of the property here in the city limits. That property, which is undeveloped, agricultural land as being used as agricultural land at this time as well, sold for $2.15 a square foot. We can also back out here the other 3 sales. Let's see if blue shows up here. We dive into some residential sales. As you can see, some of our residential sales in other subdivisions throughout town range from $2 a square foot all the way to $5 a square foot. And so that's one part of our analysis, basically, is looking at our comparable sales of properties. And this is just a tool to visualize that data so we have an understanding where the property is located at. When you're just looking at numbers provided and parcel numbers, some legal descriptions, it doesn't give you as a council and members a clear understanding where these parcels are at and the conditions that apply to them. Our second analysis then goes into our comparable assessments of the properties. And so when we look at comparable assessments, we're looking for other residential commercial zone parcels and assessed parcels within that vicinity of that property, within city limits, may add to that. And so when we look through our assessments here, our commercial is, and light industrial is outlined in green, and our residential is in the pinkish purple. And so as I touch base back with our comparable assessments, these are all of these comparable assessments outlined here in the map. As I mentioned, when we're looking at our M1 industrial, we have a median assessment of $2.01 a square foot. When we get to our medium density residential, we're looking at a median assessment of $2.50 a square foot. And then, as stated before, we're looking at through a couple hundred lots of 98 cents a square foot. And so this is the information we use to drive our recommended adjustments to the 2019 valuations. The last item I have here is the current listing of the property. The applicant does have the entire property listed for $18.6 million, but yet they request a valuation reduction down to $364,000. So I'll leave that where I'm at there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. Given the recommended $1.50 a square foot and $1 a square foot, is that taking into the comparables, just for our information, on land that some may not have access to roads, some do not have infrastructure in place?
Each of the comparable information for the comparable assessments that we use, these are all undeveloped properties that had the same zoning, same lack of improvements to the property, and same highest and best use in an appraisal standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for our assessor? Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. And I would just look to the applicant if you have any follow-up statements or information prior to a motion. Okay. Seeing none, I would look to the council. If you want to come forward, you certainly can. What are the wishes of the council? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we accept the city assessor's valuation for 2019.
Second.
Motion to approve the recommendations for the partial improvement of the abatement request for the residential and light industrial zone lots by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yep.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Motion is approved, and I would just look to the applicant one last time that this is not the final determination. You can appeal that before the county as well prior to becoming final. Number 5.3 is a public hearing regarding updates to the city special assessment policy. From time to time, the city staff reviews the city policy regarding special assessments. A few minor updates need to be made regarding the district types, the bonding period, and the prepayment policy. The last update was December of 2015. The recommendation before council is to adopt the updates to the city council special assessment policy. The number of different attachments were also included in the packet for tonight. This is a public hearing. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or opposed to the recommendations for the changes to the special assessment policy. One last time, an opportunity for anyone to come and speak in favor or opposed. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to close the public hearing and approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yep.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 5.4 is the enterprise agreement between the City of Minot and the Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau, known as Visit Minot. This legal agreement is a follow-up to the City Council's approval of an economic recovery and resiliency effort by expanding tourism, overnight hotel stays, and restaurant sales at its regular meeting November 16th, 2020. The agreement details the legal obligations of the City of Minot City and the Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau, MCVB, Visit Minot. 3 recommendations. Recommend that the City Council approve an enterprise agreement with Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau, Inc., and 2, amend the city budget in the amount of $477,000 to pay for the contract from city sales tax proceeds, and 3, authorize the mayor to sign all instruments pertaining to such agreements and amendments.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. I see that we do have our CVB director here. If you do want to come forward and if you have anything, you're certainly more than welcome to. Good evening, Ms. Shanerock.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Sibnett and members of council. I don't know that I have got anything crazy to point out here today. We've worked very closely with the city staff, and it's been a very positive process. It's caused us to evaluate some good and provide some great measurable outcomes and really focus on that entire process. So what we intend to do, what you, I believe, have in your packet is the enterprise agreement that is proposed. The intent is to come back by February 15th with another document that would show how we are going to be using, how the recruitment fund portion would actually be allocated, and that entire process getting spelled out. We did find out through this process that it was going to be important for us to focus on this first and then come back and lay out the exact ins and outs. We have the framework for it. It just was, we need to spend just a little bit more time putting crossing every T and dotting every I. So that was the intent there. I don't think there's anything really any different than what I had spoke about a month ago as far as the what Visit Minot is committing to and requesting. It's, in a nutshell, we're committing to a minimum of $10 million in economic impact over the next 3 years for 2021, 22, and 23. The total ask is $477,000 total over the next 3 years. And the three components are data collection and management, destination development, and then the team events, tourism, and development component. So those are the three components that we are looking at for the program. I don't know that I need to go into all the details unless you need me to.
Thank you, Stephanie. I don't think we need the details at this time, and otherwise I would just look to see if there are any specific questions from Ms. Shane Rock. Alderman Ross.
Not so much a question, but it seems to me that we're giving an entity money, and then we're telling them to come back and tell us how they're going to spend it, or the benchmarks. It should be the other way around. We should, the plan just really, and I know it's probably going to get passed, but I'm going to say my piece. The plan just seems too vague for me. A benchmark, I mean, what's the size of what's going to be considered as a success? A 10-team tournament? How often are we going to get reported back? I think if we're investing $500,000 into something, we should at least get reports back more than annually. I'm comfortable with them coming back and on an event-by-event basis and letting us know. I'm not comfortable with giving them $500,000 and say, come back in February and tell us how you're going to spend it. At this time, I would move we table this until we get that further information so we can make a legitimate, educated decision on how this money is going to be spent.
Ms. Hendershot.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I just want to point out for everybody's information, there would be a requirement of 2 reports each year to the City Council on the activities that are happening at Visit Minot. There are also specific requirements for the events that are built into the agreement. The funding is set up, as Steph said, for those 3 different components. Part of it is development of the 3 different components, which is part of the application or information that Steph had provided to the council before. And but this is an enterprise agreement, so there are requirements for the city to have, there's a requirement for a public purpose, some goals, and then oversight by the city, which is why we've worked in those approval processes for each of the different types of components. The data collection and marketing is an internal approval process by city staff, and then that event fund part of the agreement is something that is going to come to the City Council, and we thought that was good because it was basically the biggest part of the agreement and something that was probably most significant for the community. And so just for everybody's information, that's how it's set up, and there are those annual reports that are mandatory under the agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Hendershot. It's the way I read through here. We do have a motion to table, which supersedes the...
There's no second.
That's what I was looking for. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Alderman Padagula. It is not debatable. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
No.
Evans?
No.
Janser?
No.
Olson?
No.
Pittner?
Nope.
Padragula?
No.
Motion fails. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been a part of this process. I sit as the member of Visit Minot for the City Council. I've worked with Steph on this. I've worked with our economic development specialist, Jonathan Rosenthal. I've worked with Dave Lakefield on this, acting city manager. I've worked with Kelly Hendershot, our city attorney. This is the most airtight agreement, enterprise agreement, the city of Minot has entered that I'm aware of. This goes above and beyond, and frankly, in my opinion, goes above and beyond what I feel is even necessary to some extent, but I'm glad it's there. I thank staff and Steph for working on this to get this to this point. again, we're in enterprise agreements that we get an update once a year. We haven't asked them to come back more than once. We're already going above and beyond with this agreement, and I'm not looking to micromanage this project. This is like hiring someone to do work on your house. I'm not going to sit out there and watch them do it. I'm going to trust that I have an agreement and a contract with a competent organization and individuals that can get the job done. That's where we're at. We need someone to do this. It should have been done a long time ago. I'm not interested in tabling this for any length of time. Again, I think it's a slap in the face to anybody who wants to come to the city of Minot, any of these organizations that we want to be partners with, and say, nah, I just don't like it. I just don't like it, so come back in a couple months. I mean, what a joke. Let's move forward. Let's get something done. Let's quit trying to just nitpick all this little stuff. And and that's exactly what it is. This is nothing. These are little. I just don't like that we're only going to get talked to twice a year. We only get talked to once on other enterprise agreements. This is the best and most airtight enterprise agreement that we've been a part of as a city of Minot. So again, I don't want to slap in Steph's face or our staff's face have put a lot of time and effort into this. A lot of time and effort into this to get it to this point. This is a good thing for the city of Minot. Let's move it forward and let's get something done. There are actual benchmarks that can be measured and will be measured in this agreement. $10 million of financial impact, events that have not happened, or a percentage of growth in certain events. It's all there in the agreement that we are agreeing to. I think it's a tall ask for Steph to even think that they can do this, but I also believe that they can. I know they believe that they can. They wouldn't agree to it if they didn't think they believe they could. So again, I apologize that we even had to entertain the idea of tabling this. That's really an embarrassment. When we've gotten to this point, let's move it forward and not try to pull at a string that doesn't exist. Again, I will support this tonight.
Second call for discussion or questions. Alderwoman Evans.
And I appreciate, I don't know if Mr. Rosenthal wants to come up and discuss the significant role I think your position has in this agreement, representing our interests in the city. And I'm sure you were probably very involved in negotiating and ensuring you had a very great seat at the table.
Mr. Rosenthal, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
If you would just pull the microphone a little bit closer.
Yes, I'm happy to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Well, first, I give credit to everyone involved. I would just point to last Sunday's paper, and again, the coronavirus woes, but it's about the loss of hotel rooms and the income to the hotels. It also meant a decrease in hotel fees that we get and also go to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I would just say that the missing piece that Alderman Ross was concerned about is about the procedural elements of this. Most of this is laid out, as Attorney Hendershot pointed out. Most of those things are covered. What the piece that we're allowing a little more time to develop are, again, the procedural elements. Let me give you one example that they need to tell us about anti-discrimination elements in the process of doing this, how it's laid out, some time periods, appeals, those kinds of things. Those will be laid out, and you have a chance to examine that fully when that's submitted. But as far as the metrics, they're in there. And I think Alderman Pittner, who's been involved with this, is quite right that I think that this is a well-crafted document. We kind of started out with kind of a 3-page kind of model. It's 11 pages now, and that's because all those metrics are in there. All those safeguards are in there. And I think it's a real model of the kind of measurement that I think anybody should expect to meet. So I think that's done. Again, I think the important aspect of this is there are only so many ways that we can increase hotel rooms. And I think that this was a great idea. It's been developed a great deal by a number of good people. And again, I think it'll bear fruit. The thing that we aren't also spending, we're talking about economic impact, but there's about 10% of that same number is available, will be available in terms of new hotel taxes. So there are, substantial fiscal impact to the community directly, not just to the hotels, but to the public sector.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Final call. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Bittma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Dancer,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved, and given the circumstances, Stephanie, appreciate you being here, and congratulations, by the way. 5.5 is the recycling transfer station and new landfill entrance, project number 4580. The implementation of a curbside recycling program within the city of Minot has been ongoing discussion over the past year. Years, plural. There appears to be a general agreement with regards to the program details and costs, but prior to the program starting, the city needs to, a facility to transfer recycling materials to ship out for processing. When considering the local location of this facility, there would be many benefits to joining a new landfill entrance along with the construction of a transfer facility. This project would construct the transfer facility along with the new entrance to the landfill in the southwest corner of the quarter section south of the current landfill. The three recommendations before us this evening. Council approved the task order in the amount not to exceed $565,266 with CPS Engineering to design the recycling transfer station, design a new landfill entrance, and provide construction management services during construction. 2, recommend the council authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. And 3, recommend that the council approve the reimbursement resolution.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Evans to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Padrigula. Discussion on the motion. Alderwoman Evans.
All right, folks, so this is a follow-up of our September 8th meeting. As we, decided or planned, we're going to go step by step with the Curbside Recycling Program. This is step 2. Mr. Sorensen met with CPS Engineering and came up, that's what he's with us here tonight, with the proposal for the design and engineering. Just the design and engineering. We are not building anything right now. It is the design and engineering of a transfer facility and a new entrance for the landfill that Mr. Sorensen will explain. If anyone is interested, has to be discussed regardless if we move forward with curbside recycling or not. The expected design would come back to us probably in the spring of 2021 to take step 3, which would be building this transfer facility and new entrance. So again, the money is there. Mr. Lakefield has, confirmed that we have the money in landfill reserves and set aside already. And yeah, so this is step 2. Reminder, 65% of the city of Minot supports curbside recycling. I don't believe that many of the expenditures we have approved in the last month would have that level of public support. So I would urge my colleagues to move forward with step 2 and approve this motion.
Further discussion on the motion. Alderman Padrigula.
Yes, I had a variety of questions I wanted to ask Mr. Sorensen to get some clarification here.
If they get past 4, maybe we'll pause and let him answer and then continue from there.
Well, I had 2 areas. There were like 2 or 3 in each, and I'll stop after the first area.
Please continue.
Jason, thank you. In terms of, I want to get some sense of time frame here, and I really appreciate Carrie's emphasizing that this is a stepwise sequential process. How long would it take to do the engineering and design work that's proposed here?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padragula, I have that laid out. Derek, could you bring that up? Next slide, please. So I tried to lay out kind of a timeline of events. Basically, the three components of the task order, it would be the transfer station, there's a water main that would have to be extended along with an entrance, and then the interior roads that would have to be constructed. So those designs would all happen concurrently. And probably the transfer station design would take the longest. That would probably be ready to go for bid probably in the May timeframe. The other projects don't have quite as heavy a lift as far as design. They could potentially go a little bit earlier. But when you look at the time frame, these all happen in pieces. We design, then we bid, then we construct, and if the desire was to drag this out, into like 2023, we could design the transfer station, hold on to the design and construct at a later date, or just hold off on some of these pieces and bring them together at a little slower pace. But this is what I put together preliminarily to meet that 2022 implementation.
So basically, just to make sure I understand, you're talking about construction starting probably in May, June, somewhere in that time frame of next year?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. The second question I had is, I think it answers you, actually your chart answers it, and that would be in terms of how long the process would take, assuming we go ahead and build it, and actual recycling wouldn't start until the end of 2022.
That is correct.
So we're talking about a pretty substantial project here. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. The second area I wanted to ask about was the breakdown of the ultimate cost. I understand we're just buying essentially at this point, if we approve it, the engineering. And your previous slide, I think, had a breakdown on that.
Yes, that's it right there. So as we've been talking along the transfer facility, that's about a $1.25 million project. And then the entrance is somewhere in the neighborhood of about just over $2 million. And then the engineering that we're discussing tonight, and then the last three issues are basically related to the recycling program itself. The compactor that would go in the transfer facility, the trailers that would be used to haul the materials back and forth to Minneapolis, and then the containers, I'm estimating about 7,000 based on the survey.
And just to verify what Carrie was saying, this money is available now. It's been set aside. It's there.
That is correct. There's we had budgeted about $250,000, I think it was, in 2018 to start the transfer station design, and there are landfill reserves then to cover the remainder.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been very informative. Appreciate the gathering of all the information.
Not a problem.
Mr. Lakefield, do you have a little more to add?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, the money is available and set aside for the task order at hand, the initial design. We're right now under the impression, or we believe that we would have enough in reserves and other funding sources to fund the rest of the project. But we also did attach a refunding resolution to this action tonight in case the city decided that they wanted to utilize any type of bond financing in the future. That's something that needs to be done very early in the process. We haven't committed to that at this point. We just need the resolution approved as well in case we make the decision that that is something that we wanted to pursue.
Thank you, Mr. Lakefield. And just a follow-up question as well, dating back to 2016 or 17, community facilities dollars that are there. Question is, refresh my memory on the community facilities dollars that were dedicated for this project, if any. My memory gets a little foggy going back that far.
Mr. Mayor, and I don't have the right copy of the budget book because it's further back. There was some community facilities funding. Jason, do you remember the dollar amount? Is that the 250 you're referring to?
No, above and beyond the 250, there's 766,000 and then some dollars and cents behind that.
Thank you, Jason. And that was, I couldn't remember if it was $500,000 or 700,000, but I knew it was essentially kind of a remainder of what was out there in that fund at that point. But there are some of those dollars dedicated just for everyone here and then everyone else watching, dating that far back. Alderman Pittner, you had, looked like you had your hand raised for a moment.
I didn't, but I'll say something, I guess.
Okay.
No, I appreciate all the work on this. I don't think I'm going to support this tonight. Not because I don't like the idea of recycling or I don't believe in the idea of recycling in the city of Minot. I believe that this conversation is very intimate and should be very closely had at the same time as a new landfill investigation that we tabled on our July 6th meeting. I don't believe it is in the best interest of that possible project on relocating a landfill to invest north of $4.5 million in the property we own. And by putting the transfer station down there, I just think that these conversations should be had at the same time. We've postponed that until next July. I made a motion in the past to postpone it as well, to postpone this conversation to coincide with that. But again, I believe it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit on these decisions.
Alderman Janser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I was just going to point out that, we are engaged in opening the cell out at the current landfill. And the likelihood of quickly getting a new landfill sited, a process that we're told can take a considerable number of years, sort of leads me to conclude that this is not a bad investment and it's not a bad discussion to be having at this time. So I'm going to support this tonight. I am concerned that we take this forward step by step, and there's sort of this blending now of the change of the location of the landfill entrance with the transfer station and the stand-up of the recycling program. And in reality, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that if, for instance, the bottom completely falls out of the recyclables market, that, we still have two sort of separate things that we're dealing with here, and then we should act appropriately. Thank you.
Further discussion. Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, just a question on, will the counties that are using our landfill right now, will they be required also to take part in a recycling program? Or is that a process where we're going to divide out or pull out? How do you see that working?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Ross, those are some discussions that we've had along the way, getting into recycling. I guess the transfer facility being constructed opens the door for many other communities to begin recycling. If a Burlington or a Surrey or some of the larger small towns around us would want to implement a program, they could. We'll have to work out the costs and those things for tipping at the transfer facility and at one time there were some ideas of trying to incentivize recycling and to try to figure out how that can be done. Those are discussions that can still be had, but yeah, this opens the door for some other opportunities for the entire region to recycle, really.
Is there a benefit to us? It just seems like that should be a requirement. I think if we're moving to try and save space in our landfill, we should almost at least consider requiring other communities that take part in our landfill or use our landfill to take part or start at least the process of developing their own recycling programs.
certainly worth considering, sure. Thank you.
Early on in the discussion, I believe that even talking about surcharging those that didn't participate to further fund the program or incentivize those types of scenarios have been discussed as well. I did also want to just say a few words here as we've had lengthy discussions, and we'll gladly pick up the issue of the landfill moving in July. But given the fact that the EPA permitting has proven, not only in North Dakota, but many other areas around the upper Midwest, to take a decade, and that's not pessimistic, that's what it is. I think it's a good investment moving forward. It's a good utilization of the dollars that we've already invested out there, and knowing that even if we're able to find the impossible down the road of a relocation location, that we're at least able to get this moving now and perhaps evolve it as time does go on. As the recycling industry itself, we certainly hope it doesn't bottom out more than it already has, which to many of the folks that have emailed, called, or contacted over the last couple of weeks with the issue of one of the other recyclers in town that got out of most of it. That is the reason with the market itself, is the profitability certainly isn't there, which is, we've had this discussion, I don't know how many different times, Jason. The information is all out there on YouTube. I would encourage anybody, there's hours of it that they can go back through. But I think it's the right move with the money that we have right now, given the time frame that we know it's going to be there. I will leave it at that. Further discussion. Last call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
No.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the end of the action items. That takes us to number 6 on our agenda. This is personal appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda this evening. One more call for personal appearances, an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda. Seeing none, we will move on to miscellaneous and discussion items. 7.1 is an update from the Minot Alliance of Nonprofits. Mr. Scott Burlingame is here with us this evening.
Can I introduce him and why?
By
he's
all
here?
means.
Okay. So we have heard a lot in the past few months, particularly from our businesses and other entities, and the impact the pandemic and COVID has had on them. And in talking with some of our nonprofit leaders in the city, it became really apparent we don't really have a good grasp, or at least I didn't, on how COVID has been impacting our nonprofit organizations and who are serving, some of the most vulnerable people in our community. So I invited the Alliance to come here today just to share with us what 2020 and COVID has looked like for their world. And so we have a sense of, this part of our community as well. So Mr. Burlingame is representing the Alliance and is going to talk to us a bit more about the nonprofits in Minot. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as introduced, my name is Scott Burlingame, and I'm here tonight in my role as the president of the Minot Alliance of Nonprofits. The Minot Alliance of Nonprofits is an organization representing 33 local nonprofit organizations who collaborate to raise the profile and illustrate the importance of the nonprofit sector. Together, we participate in professional trainings, create meaningful mentoring opportunities, address the community-wide issues, and much more. Our membership represents many vital segments of the nonprofit sector. This includes the arts, with organizations like the Minot Symphony Orchestra and the Minot Council of the Arts. We have 6 organizations who support local children, including Companions for Children, a local youth mentoring organization that has provided mentors to children since 1972. The Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch, who helps at-risk children and their families, and the Magic City Discovery Center, who will soon build a beautiful center for our children to learn and play. We also have 6 foundations, including the Minot Area Community Foundation, St. Joseph's Community Foundation, and the Minot State University Development Foundation. Finally, we have 19 organizations that provide human services, including the Domestic Violence Crisis Center that has served 1,364 families in our community this year alone as they experience one of the most trying times in their lives. The Minot Commission on Aging, who has not skipped a beat in trying during this pandemic, even as their who has not skipped a beat during this pandemic, even has increased their capacity to ensure the most vulnerable in our community are receiving hot meals. Calix, who provides housing and supports for some of our most at-risk citizens. And finally, my personal favorite, Independence Incorporated, working hard to remove barriers and help people with disabilities achieve their dreams. It is a role of the nonprofit sector to perform the tasks and services for-profit businesses cannot make money at, and the government has no business performing. Our sector in North Dakota represents about 15% of our total workforce. Did you know that that's more than twice the amount of the manufacturing industry in our state? Of which the Minot Alliance of Nonprofits represents a combined 917 employees. Like many other parts of our economy, our sector often struggles with workforce challenges. However, make no mistake, we are professionals. The leaders of our local nonprofit communities average 17 years of experience with a combined over 500 years of experience in our sector. Since the COVID-19 pandemic has rocked our world, our Alliance has implemented 2 surveys of our membership to ascertain the effects on our sector and to explore how these effects are challenging our community. As you know, fundraisers are often the backbone of our industry. Fundraisers create an avenue for organizational self-sustainability, flexible dollars to support our unique needs, and awareness of our mission to those in the community. I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to you when I tell you fundraising has been a struggle all year. This is especially true for those of us who have had fundraisers canceled, such as the MSU Gala, the Prairie Grit Adaptive Sports Annual Banquet, the Great Tomato Festival, and Companions for Children's annual fundraising event, to name just a few. Not only do these in-person gatherings support local nonprofit organizations, but they also have a trickle-down effect on our local hospitality industry. Of our members surveyed, 86% have canceled a fundraiser since March, resulting in a loss of thousands and thousands of dollars in revenue. The economic impact the COVID pandemic has had on our nonprofit sector will be felt for years to come. When our community members are hurting, they turn to the nonprofit sector for help. Unfortunately, when people are losing their jobs, when they are fighting to maintain their housing, when parents are struggling to feed their children, when people need an extra hand and support just to get by, the funding for those supports are often decreased. It is for this reason that the nonprofits maintain a rainy day fund. Well, it's raining right now, and those rainy day funds are quickly being drained to allow for us to continue to meet the community's increasing needs. Although many of us local nonprofits were fortunate to benefit from payroll protection dollars, those funds have been expended and the revenues are dwindling. Therefore, in the next 6 months, many of these organizations will need additional support in order to maintain our current service to our community. The nonprofit sector is equally important to our community as a strong business community, the local government, and the education system. Nonprofit touch many aspects of our daily life and are irreplaceable as a part of a healthy community. Nonprofits provide us with culture and arts. They help us heal. They educate us. They mentor us. They mentor our children. They are our civic and social clubs, and they are houses of worship. That said, tonight us and our alliance are requesting a few simple things. Please allow the nonprofits a seat at the table when there are conversations about how our community continues to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and allow our sector access to any emergency funding that may become available in the future to aid in our recovery. Finally, as we move beyond this pandemic, please look to our sector as a vital partner in all efforts to make Minot a strong and resilient community. Thank you so much, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Burlingame. Just a quick question, actually, for myself here. has the Nonprofit Alliance reached out at the state level through the governor's office in those means? Is that's kind of the starting point for a lot of the commerce grants?
Yeah, one of my other roles as well is I'm on the North Dakota Association of Nonprofit Organizations, and we have through that reached out, and as well as what we're doing here tonight to just kind of raise that level of community awareness around these issues. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott, and I appreciate you being here and the presentation. Questions for Mr. Burlingame? Thank you, Scott, and I certainly will carry that message forward as well when we have our different discussions with the different mayors around North Dakota with the governor as continued as we do updates just about every other week in a roundtable discussion. So appreciate it. Thank you. And from someone who MCs many of those events, I can say this is normally a very busy time of the year, and it is not right now. So certainly our thoughts are out with all of you, and for anyone else that is out there continually on Amazon, perhaps maybe think about that in our nonprofits within our community this holiday season and into the new year, as a lot of those events have gone online for fundraising. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And end of year giving as well. You know, people are looking, to get their 2020 taxes in order. Reminder, if you, think about or do give to nonprofits at the end of the year, don't forget about local nonprofits who are really doing, like Scott said, the work that government, isn't capable of doing and that for-profit companies don't do. So they have continued to provide all of these services during a very incredibly trying period for our community, and we appreciate that and don't want to see them economically fail and not be able to provide these services. So thank you, Scott, and hopefully people will be generous even without the fundraisers and the great MCs.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to 7.2, and this is the MADC Minot Chamber of Commerce update, and as I like to call it, taking care of my liaison report for me this evening. Good evening, Mr. McMartin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. You've got, I think, a 12-page report that we provided for you. I'm certainly appreciative of your time, and so I'm not going to read it page by page. I'm going to give you a very quick summary and see if you've got some questions. And I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. I would echo, this is not part of my report, but I would echo Scott's comments. Both MADC and the Chamber are 501c6s and participate in nonprofit work in different ways. We were specifically excluded from the PPP program the first go-around. And in terms of some of the services that we provide, that was very painful. We've lost members, and as you'll see in my report about MADC, there are some of the activities that we weren't able to do because of the COVID. So with that, let me move on. Pages 1 through 3 reports on our numbers that we signed a contract with you with before for the last 6 months. And it's no surprise that COVID played a major role in what could be accomplished. And I would specifically draw your attention to comments around the BEAR report, the Business Expansion and Retention Program. We just simply weren't able to get out. One of the IEDC courses that I signed up for was specifically aimed at the BEAR process, or BR&E as they refer to it, and we'll probably start using that same acronym here in town. But they recommended that we not do things via phone, that we not do Zoom. People have started to get accustomed to Zoom, but if you're sitting down talking with somebody about investments that they've made, capital investments that they want to make in the future, and how their business has been run or how it's doing, you want to be sitting across the desk from them. I don't think you want to be necessarily having the conversation virtually. Pages 4 and 5 contain the summary of the tasks and the status for that contract, which covered a period of 18 months. And again, you'll see, I think we've hit or exceeded every benchmark except for the areas, the BEAR, as we call it, the BEAR program, and some of the continuing ed. And some of that had to do with Stephanie leaving and just no training programs that really were there. Jamie, there's reference to Dale Carnegie course. Jamie started the course and then it got postponed for 4 or 5 months, and then they were able to pick back up as things kind of seemed to think that it was going to be okay during the summer, and they were able to get their program done. But it's things that we'll continue to work on in the future. Pages 6 and 7 highlights the work on one brand that's occurred. You've been hearing from Lisa about the progress on one brand. I think that 2-page report will give you a significantly good feel. I would just make reference to and draw your attention on one item in the second page. It talks about executing contract training and onboarding for CrowdRiff tool. And that's a tool that works very well for the convention and visitors sector, CVBs. That's where the social media works. Some of the people that might be appearing on hashtag Make Minot Magic, you're seeing because of that CrowdRiff software, and so we can organically build some of the people in that you'll see out on that hashtag site, and we've set that up so that the cost of the contract for CrowdRiff was covered, and Visit Minot will have access to that going on for another year and a half. So we're very pleased with that. Pages 8 through 10 provides a summary, and I can't really believe what I'm about to say, but a summary of just 2.5 months of activity at the intermodal ramp. If you had driven by the intermodal ramp during the first 12 days of October, all you would have seen was a vacant piece of property. I mean, yeah, there were some small grain bins out there. There was a big building out there. There was rail on the ground, but you didn't see much of anything going on. Today, and since the first train left in October, today it's bustling with activity. A train a week has left the intermodal port, headed for the Northwest Seaport Alliance, Seattle and Tacoma. Largely at this point in time, they've been shipping out grain products. And what that means is our local agricultural producers and/or companies that have located in and around the area, and I would draw, specific inference to AGT Foods, which is just north of the port, but the ethanol plant down at Underwood also is hauling in DDGs, which is dried distillers grain, and there is a significant market for that, I believe, in Korea, South Korea, for feeding of critters. And so that is just absolutely phenomenal where we were, like I say, on the 1st of October. Also referenced in that report is the media coverage that was received and how far out the media coverage went in the areas that additional services picked it up, what it would have cost us if we had to pay for it out of pocket, and what the potential number of viewers were. And I emphasize potential because some of the publications, not everybody in that marketplace is going to read it, but we've certainly gotten some phone calls. And I would tell you that I believe the current workforce is at least 20, if not more. And if you drive out there during the week, there are times that there are more than 20 of the big bottom drop grain hauling trucks sitting in line, waiting to drop their product to be loaded into containers to head to the West Coast. So there's a fair amount of activity from trucking. The operator has brought some new equipment in, which will hopefully make them more efficient. And it's just spectacular. And if any of the council would like an opportunity to go out and look, please just give me a call. I'd be happy to take you out, get you a little closer than you might feel like you either should be or could on your own, and be happy to talk to you about that. Pages 11 and 12 highlight the proposed merger and the activities that have occurred in the merger process. I'm pleased to report to you tonight that 94% of the chamber members that voted and 95% of the MADC investors that were voted were in favor, and so we are moving forward. I believe there'll be documents sent to the Attorney General's office that we're required to do yet tomorrow, and then we'll be doing some follow-up work with documents to the Secretary of State's office. In conclusion, I've met with Dave Lakefield, and we looked at the contract that we needed to update for MADC and the city, and we'll be back before the council in January for approval of that contract. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McMartin. Questions for John on either the report or I think any of the activities over the last 12 months? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. John, one of the items that was new jobs training totaling $13,436. Is that primary sector businesses?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And then
follow.
Yep. They got a couple more. How has COVID affected your guys' financial situation? Having only one CEO, not necessarily with COVID, but with between Chamber and MADC, less travel, less trade shows. Are you guys in a good spot? Has this placed more funds in your reserves, or?
It certainly has for MADC, for the Chamber. The Chamber also provides, and I think most of you have heard me say this, the motor vehicle branch office, the employees are the Chambers. The state guidelines made it awfully difficult to conduct business for about 3.5 months. There was a drop box that was used, and yes, people could get their tabs and plates, but it made things extremely difficult. We've come through that, but there is no way to go back, and that would have been a good place for us to be able to use PPP funds. What the Chamber did do was recognize that the employees were valued. We paid salaries. We paid all of the benefits, and so 6 full-time jobs were maintained down at Motor Vehicle. It'll take us a little while to dig out of that one, to say the least.
That'll be it for now.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. McMartin? Alderman Patagula.
Just a quick question, John. How's the recruitment process for a new head of the joint organizations coming? What kind of a timeline are we looking at?
I think you're probably looking at him for probably the next 15 months or so, Stephen. The board has indicated that that's the position they want me in, and then I'll work to put the organization together, and we'll also assist the board at finding my replacement towards the end of that time frame.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Before we go, John, I want to say, great job. It's been a heck of a year. I know the Chamber has gone through a heck of a lot. I know MADC has had a mountain of work through COVID and to pull all of this stuff. And there's a lot of board members too on MADC side that put in a lot of extra work it's all volunteer time. And we talk about volunteers, that's again, a component of this community to pull together what happened with the intermodal. And I don't want to understate its importance. It's a game changer. To give some folks an idea of the regional impact, and I can't use names because it's on what I do professionally, but there's farmers within a 60-mile radius that are hauling their own high-value peas and lentils off their farm that were in a grain bin into containers and being shipped directly point of origin over to a buyer in the I believe the Korean market. I could be wrong. I don't even know where it's going, but it's the start of what's to come with this. And I think once we truly get our hands around this, it is going to be something monumental. But it took a lot over the last 12 months. It was 20 years leading up to this, but the last 12 months have been breakneck. So, John, thank you. Thank to the rest of the board members that put in a lot of work. It's really something spectacular, and we certainly look forward to the new venture moving forward, collectively working harder and smarter together. So thank you.
Thank you, and I would be remiss if I didn't say it's not just me, it's the staff back at the office, and more importantly, it's the volunteers that take the time to do the chamber and the chamber committees and Task Force 21 and MADC. I'm joined at the hip with several of them working through the issues at the port. So thank you all very much.
We look forward to what's next.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. That takes us to our liaison reports. We will start over with Alderman Padagula this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report in terms of the Emergency Management Steering Planning Committee. The Commission on Aging is not meeting this month because of obvious concerns regarding health issues. There was a complication, although the Commission on Aging is not responsible for the building, but there was a complication with elevators being out of service in the Parker Suites. That is being taken care of now. But I think it's something that the emergency providers and planners in our community maybe need to keep in mind. We do have some high-rises, and we're getting more facilities with elevators. And I think it's something we should be looking at as a community to make sure that they're being operating and that they have some fallback options. This facility is particularly significant because of a lot of people with health issues or elderly individuals who aren't as mobile as in other places. And when we have buildings that are 10 and 15 stories tall, I think we need to make sure that they are adequately maintained, and then there are contingency plans. I'm also worried, although power was not an issue here, I'm also concerned with the globalization and all of the cyber attacks on America that I think we need to be looking at having auxiliary power for large buildings with elevators. I know our sewage plants and water facilities and our own police and fire stations are equipped. And you don't want to force too much on private property owners, but I think that's something we should be looking at for the future. I don't find it appealing to have our emergency services people having to rescue people from elevators when there are even more pressing problems perhaps out there. So that's one thing that's happened and hopefully under control now, but kind of reveals a vulnerability in the community. And in terms of the County Planning Commission, Carrie and I are both on there, and I think I'll leave it up to her to provide her perspective on it. It's been a very long, from my perspective, a very long, drawn-out process, and we'll persevere, and I'll leave the rest of the reporting up to her.
Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seemed like I started 2020 out really busy, and I'm kind of finishing 2020 up a little bit later. So the only committee that I have attended the work that they are doing, was the Service Basin Planning Council. Did attend their monthly meeting. One interesting little fact about that, since I was seated on that council in July, I've yet to meet any of the people in in person, because we have had all of our meetings virtual, but they're still getting the work done, and so it's working, and I look forward to sometime in 2021 when I can meet all of my fellow colleagues on that council.
Alderwoman Evans.
So Ward County Planning, we're continuing a process that I think even Mayor, you said you were involved with when you were on that committee of rewriting the zoning ordinances. We will get it done. It is slow and tedious. The one thing I have enjoyed about the process is getting to know the Ward County Commissioners a bit better, because they comprise most of the Planning Commission, and sort of the unique flavor of the county versus the city as far as zoning goes. So, I think there is a huge unanimous feeling we're going to get this done in 2021. We're going to get it out to the public for feedback and all of that good stuff, and we're gonna really put it to bed. So, but it is a painful process at times. My other committee, the library. Library's still there. As folks are probably seeing, construction, the outside work is still happening at the library. That is expected to be finished up actually very soon. The glass and the aluminum, and then the lettering will go on the east side of the building, and the outside project will be done and spiffy. So that is exciting, that despite all the other things we've had to postpone for COVID this year, that was able to proceed. The library is amazing in its strategic planning. We as a board and staff got together and updated the strategic plan, and did, as you should with a strategic plan, check-in, make sure, things haven't changed. And Director Anderson and her staff are working hard at, envisioning and implementing the vision and mission of the library. So we still have reduced hours over there because of COVID, but hopefully if the numbers continue to go in the direction they're going, it will resume, eventually, hopefully sooner versus later, normal hours. But there has been some great things during the pandemic as well, good programs that the staff has been creative, like where you go pick up things and go home and make them, and that just skyrocketed, hundreds and hundreds of cars coming to pick that up. So there's some good things that hopefully will be continued even after we get back to normal. But don't forget about our library and visiting and, doing their digital resources and, physical books as well. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just cover a couple of mine very quickly. I met this morning with the Ward County Weed Board. We have been having discussions on what is to come. Of course, UAV being part of that discussion on autonomous flying for spraying, and it's, I suppose, niche areas which very well could be potentially waterway, given the small amount of capacity that UAVs are able to carry for payload, but of course it's in the early areas. But just on the one side, of course, weed spraying across the county was impacted because of COVID. That also meant in Minot, because we're in Ward County, and typically the Ward County Weed Board does a lot with purple loosestrife in town and along the Souris River. So we're already looking towards 2021 and planning that side. John, thank you for taking care of the MADC report. On the Task Force 21, Alderman Janser, who's the head of Task Force, but not as the council portion, just as the chief knowledge information component of that. But we went out along with Mr. McMartin and other folks from Task Force 21 for the Omaha Trophy presentation. A good number of representatives from Team Minot were out there, and it was once again from different folks that were visiting. That it was very noticeable on the involvement from the community volunteers for Team Minot for this type of trophy presentation, and I think just all out really entrenchment on how much the city, the community, and when I say the city, the community supports Minot Air Force Base. So that was phenomenal. We also had Team Minot breakfast, socially distanced breakfast. Everyone was more than 6 feet apart. It was the first time that we had been kind of face-to-face from a distance out there. And then I also did attend the 5th Medical Group's medal presentation and appreciation for all of the hard work that the 5th Medical Group has done through COVID and all of their successes out at Minot Air Force Base with yet again a socially distanced award presentation. So congratulations to the 5th Medical Group and of course to the 91st and the 5th for all of their successes this year. I'll go into a little more detail during my mayor's report with a few pictures, but that's been the last couple of weeks. Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only report is from the Zoning Ordinance Steering Committee. The zoning ordinance is out, still open for public comment, I think until, is it the end of December or January? End of December, still open, and people can review the zoning ordinance and comment on that from the Planning Department's webpage. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Janser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our local subdivisions liaison committee has not met. We'll probably be meeting first quarter after the first of the year. Other than that, I have no report. Thanks for covering the TF21 piece.
Didn't go nearly as deeply into detail as I should, but I have another shot come January. So, Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the committees that I'm a liaison to is the Renaissance Board. Again, doing good work there. People taking advantage, investors and individuals taking advantage of that program that we have in place, which is exciting. We'll have another one of those applications before us pretty soon. And Visit Minot, which we spoke to earlier in the meeting. So we'll leave it at that.
All right. That is the end of our liaison reports. We just have one final item on our agenda for this evening. And
Before we do that, you know, it is Mr. Lakefield's last, right? His last meeting at the dais.
It is. It is the final meeting at the dais.
So I couldn't let that go unrecognized that, you know, our new permanent city manager will be sitting in that seat in our January 7th meeting, but wanted to, you've been the only city manager I've known, Mr. Lakefield, and appreciate all of the help for me as a new member in getting my feet wet and all of the incessant questions I have before every meeting, between meetings, after meetings. You know, your commitment to both the finance department and the city at large and the departments during this time has been phenomenal. I hope you get a few days off to rest when Mr. Stewart comes, but I just wanted to thank you for stepping up and serving our city in an expanded role at a time when we really needed someone.
Alderman Patagula.
I wanted to join and second what Carrie said. I've been through many more city managers than she has, but I have been very impressed with Dave's work ethic, his judgment, his maturity, the incredible hours he's put in. I feel he's somebody from my perspective of many, many years who I can trust totally, who I can depend on totally, and I wanted to really thank him for his service, even though it hasn't been all that long. I think the city has been in remarkably good hands, and I really appreciate everything he's done. And if we didn't have COVID, I'd at the very least give him a very warm two-handed handshake. And I might even give him a hug. It might be a little bit familiar, but I think that's the level of gratitude and appreciation I have. Sometimes we say things in words, sometimes we say them in our emotions, in our body language. And a very firm handshake is the least I would offer. So I really, really appreciate everything you've done, Dave, for the city, the administration, the staff, in these past many months. And, I wish you a long and successful career going back to your former role. Thank you. Thank you very much, David.
Yeah. See, you're still going to be here in January, right? I'll have a little more for this in January as well. So with that, we are left to number 9.
Motion, second.
By Alderwoman Evans, second by Alderman Pittner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.